So hello everyone and welcome to our webinar called Earth-Friendly Kiln Firing. My name is Yuliya Makliuk. I'm a potter and environmentalist from Ukraine and I'll be your host today. Thank you for joining us and please welcome our three distinguished guests joining us for this event. Please mute your mics. Yes, thank you. So today we have Dr. Steve Harrison, Denise Joyal, and Jesse Jones. I will introduce them in greater detail in a couple of minutes after a short intro to the topic. We are really excited to see you all and to see all the interest and support we got from you while preparing for this webinar. Thank you for being with us today. Please let me know if you can hear me and see me well. There is a chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you are watching us on Zoom. So you should be able to click it and write a message to everyone so you can try how it works and write if you can see me and hear me well. That would help. Thank you. Some people are watching us in Zoom while others watch live stream on Facebook or on Instagram. And if you are watching us on Instagram, I suggest you better join us on Facebook instead. I'll share, because Instagram doesn't allow us to share presentations. So this live stream on Instagram will be finished after the introduction, and I will share a link to Facebook. There is a little like this technical overlap, but that's how it works at the moment. So some of you already know me and we are already acquainted through social media or my publications on sustainable ceramics or by Patreon. Good to see you. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm a self-taught potter and sustainability consultant. I live in Irpin. It is a town near Kiev in Ukraine. And I make ceramics under the brand name Here and Now Pottery. Since I'm in Ukraine, you probably know what is going on here. So since the beginning of full-scale Russian invasion in February last year, I've tried to use my creative skills in some ways to try and ease the suffering and, you know, just help people. So I've been doing a few projects. One of them is Host a Potter. It was an initiative to find pottery studios abroad so that our potters refugees can find a place to stay. And I also did a few fundraising campaigns with my ceramics to help the victims of the war and the military forces. And this webinar is part of my new project called Saving the World as a Potter. And it is to celebrate and empower ceramicists on their way towards sustainability. And this project is made possible by people who support my work on Patreon. If you are one of my patrons, thank you so much for your support. And thank you for making this webinars free for everyone to join. Now, let me present our topic as well as our honored guests. So today we'll talk about firing ceramics. A kiln, as we all know, is a heart of the pottery studio. And as well, unfortunately, it is responsible for the biggest share of ceramic production and environmental footprint. Be it with wood, gas, oil, or electricity, firing ceramics produces CO2 and other fumes that contribute to climate change. Scientific articles on ceramics life cycle analysis suggest that firing is the stage that creates the most CO2 or the biggest portion of carbon footprint of all other stages of ceramic production. Depending on a particular technique, firing one small ceramic item, like a small cup, is responsible for roughly 1 kilogram of CO2. Meaning, if you make like 1,000 cups a year, you would need 5 mature trees to absorb that amount of CO2. There are several ways to make firing more eco-friendly, and our guests will talk about them in a greater detail. I will just name them. So one is firing more efficiently, like packing your kiln tightly, insulating it, firing off peak if you're using electricity, and so on. Second is firing less. So like sticking to row glazing instead of two firings, adjusting to lower temperatures, or not firing at all if you are producing decorative or conceptual works. And number 3 is firing with better fuel. So like switching to more polluting fuels to less polluting, like for example, opting for propane or green electricity, renewable electricity, or wood scraps in two-chambered kiln. And this is what Steve and Jesse will talk about. If you're interested in like greening your ceramic practice in general, you can find my 15 steps guide called A Greener Pottery. It's available at Here and Now Pottery as a PDF. So the people who would share their expertise with us today are number 1, Dr. Steve Harrison from Australia, also known by his blog Hot and Sticky. He describes himself as digital native, and he's a famous author of books about local ceramics materials, and laid-back wood firing. Steve builds his smoke-free kilns that operate on dead branches, the so-called vegan wood firing, and he also uses solar power in his electric kilns. And he is known to have survived a recent massive wildfire in one of his own kilns. Then we have Denise Joyal from the United States of America, known as the Kiln Joy. She is an adjunct professor of ceramics at Wilson College, and he uses atmospheric firings for her ceramics inspired by the Neolithic Irish stone constructs. Denise will talk about carbon footprint in details, and she will compare different types of firing and kilns, and she will present a carbon and cost calculator that she invented or made. And we also have with us Jesse Jones from the USA, who is a civil engineer and a potter of the Pleasant Hill Pottery. And he has 5 wood-fired kilns, several of which use vegetable waste oil as an additional fuel. And Jesse will explain how it helps with making his firings more sustainable. We are very proud to have you all today. And experience. So each of the speakers will have a short presentation, and we'll be able to ask questions after each presentation. You will be able to write those questions in a chat. Now, without further ado, let us start the presentations. And I invite Denise Joyal to please open our webinar and share your knowledge with us. I will now make you, Denise, I will make you a host.
Great. Thanks, Yuliya. I appreciate it. I'm at 2 screens here, so I'm not looking away from you guys. Let me start this slideshow here, and then I can share my screen. Everybody see that okay? Mm-hmm. Great. Great. So a few years ago, I wrote an article called Aesthetics and Environment, Kilns and Carbon that I published in Ceramics Monthly. And one of the things that I noted were that people who enjoy atmospheric firing still may wish to do atmospheric firing, as I do, but there are ways to curtail some of the carbon output. Additionally, after extensive talks with a number of experts, I found that some people consider wood to be carbon neutral because as wood decays, it puts the same amount of carbon into the environment as it does when you fire it. For my calculations, I actually counted it as 75% neutral because that carbon over the decaying period takes longer than the immediate firing that you're doing. And so I feel like you're kind of pushing that carbon out faster than it would happen if the wood were decaying. So I couldn't necessarily feel good in calling it carbon neutral. But knowing that whether it decayed or were burned, that the same amount of carbon is released from the wood can make you feel a little bit better about using wood in your firing process. One of the things that I've done also, I do bisque fire some of my work, and my electric company gave us the choice. So we were able to go through a company that uses wholly solar and wind power for electricity. So I feel better about that experience too when I use an electric kiln. So here on my screen is my new hybrid wood and soda kiln. It was built in the last 18 months. My husband and Tim Sherman of Sherman Ceramics, who's a good friend, and I built this kiln. Tim's the welder and the door expert, so I'm very excited that it actually has a door that slides. And this is a picture of the interior before I built up the bag wall there. So what I want to really show you, if I go to my next slide, is that the propane burners, because it's both propane and wood, the propane burners are in the back of the kiln, and there are channels that go underneath the kiln. And then if I go back, let me see, if I go back a slide, oh, it wanted me to do that. Sorry. Oh, what did it do? I apologize. 1 second here. Let's go back. It's taking a second to load here. There we go. So one of the things that you can see here, this is the grate where when I put the wood in, the wood will sit on this grate. The fire goes under this floor and comes out beneath this grate. So I'm actually kind of making dual use of that fuel by helping ignite the wood as I add it. The other thing that I do here is I noted that when I had a soda and wood fired kiln a little while back, and it was smaller than this one, I had to actually build channel extensions for the propane because the majority of the ignition was actually happening towards the back of the kiln in the chimney. Propane needs oxygen in order to ignite, and it needs a little bit of time to fully ignite. So to get the most out of the fuel, you need a fairly long path to get that flame to really fully ignite and get the most out of your fuel. A lot of people are excited when flames are coming out of their chimney, but I feel like I'm just putting money and carbon into the environment. I'd rather use the fuel in the kiln itself. So that's kind of the theory behind this method. Here's some of the work that's come out of the kiln. So you can see that I can wad things on shells. I'll fire with propane and add wood, and as I fire, and I get some really nice, colorful effects from the kiln. So I'm very happy with the quality of the results from this on a number of different clay bodies. One of the things that I have, let me exit this. One of the things that I have that I wanted to show you was the CO2 workbook that I created in part of the article that I wrote some time ago. So this is an Excel spreadsheet. If you request a copy, I can send it to you so you can use it yourself. Essentially what this does is this tells you how many pounds of CO2 are happen when you have either a kilowatt hour, a gallon of gasoline, a gallon of oil, a gallon of propane, a quart of wood, etc. So you can come in here and you can put in the amount of propane that you use and the number of cords of wood or whatever, and find out like what that number is. So, here, for example, I just have that calculation of 12.8 for 1 gallon of propane. So since, let's say I used 50 gallons of propane, now I know that that's 640.5 pounds of CO2. Now I'm actually adding that to a quart of wood because this is about what my kiln used in my last firing. So my CO2 output here, and then I divide it by my cubic feet of stacking space so I can see that per cubic foot, what my carbon usage is. And then if I take a piece, like I take a 3 by 3 by 4 T-bowl, that's 36 cubic inches. I can see what the cubic footage of that is and ultimately determine how many pounds of CO2 went into that particular cup. Now, this is the straight, I'm not counting wood as carbon neutral at all. This is that straight calculation. So over here, I've used the calculation that, if wood were a quarter of the carbon output that you would normally have, based on the idea that as it decays, it's putting that carbon back into the atmosphere, whether or not it were burned. Then I can look at that calculation this way. So this is kind of the modified calculation based on wood being 75% carbon neutral. So that's my CO2 output for that particular piece. And, it'd be my hope that as I continue to fire my kiln, that I can refine and do things to help improve, the fuel usage and still get the results that I enjoy. I do also have a spreadsheet here, and this was from my article in Ceramics Monthly, and I'm sure Yuliya can share a link for that as a post presentation information. But you can see here for each firing, different potters that I interviewed, their cubic feet of stacking space. If wood is carbon neutral, what does that mean? What it costs to fire the kiln, what types of fuel they're using, and then you can actually have the cost per cubic foot as well. And so this will give you some information on different kilns and what their costs are and what the carbon footprint is. You'll see here, per cubic foot costs $1.03 to fire an electric kiln. This was a few years back. Kilowatt hours may have gone up. But you can also see here that some of these kilns are more carbon friendly than the average electric kiln. So you may look to some of these methods to determine if that's a type of firing you want to do, how you could be successful with that. And so then it keeps going over here to my current one, which again, I want to tweak my firings as time goes on. But it'll give you a feel for what the range is. Are there any questions on the calculations and how these were come up with, or anything else?
Thank you, Denise. Can you make me a host, please, back again, so I can see if there are more people who want to join, and then we can proceed to the questions.
Oh, I let people in as I was going.
Ah, wow, so smart of you. I usually cannot talk and manage at the same time, but you're much better in that.
I saw them pop up, so I let them in.
Okay, so people, if you have questions about that, please write them in a chat. And while you are thinking about that, I have a question.
Sure.
So Denise, like you said that you calculate wood as being 75% neutral, carbon neutral. So I'm just wondering where this number comes from. Is that more like an intuition? Is it backed up with any, articles, anything?
Yeah, so one of the people that I consulted when I was writing my article was John Britt, and we kind of had a conversation about where we might put that. So I wouldn't say that it was necessarily an environmental scientist that gave me that number, but John and I kind of talked about what would we think would make sense based on that idea? Because some people were just saying, oh, well, it's carbon neutral because it puts out the same amount of carbon, whether it decays in the ground or it goes up in smoke. But we felt like it was unfair because you're kind of, you're pushing that to happen more quickly. Right. So trying to find some fair calculation, that's kind of just where we landed.
Okay, I see. Okay, yeah, and it would of course depend on what kind of wood you use, what kind of forest, what is the forest management there?
Right.
Is this forest
even decay, right? Yeah.
is this forest even being replanted, or is it just being cut and that's it?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. We now have lots of questions.
All right.
I will read them aloud.
Okay.
One by one. Okay. What's the Debbie asks, what's the best way to request the carbon spreadsheet from Denise?
Oh, yes. You can email me. It's denise@kilnjoy.com, and I'll be happy to provide a copy.
Okay, if I share a link to your article and your email in the after webinar communications. Okay.
That'd be great.
So people, you'll be able to email Denise and she will generously share her tables with you. Thank you so much. So next questions, Jane asks, hi Denise, assuming the electricity figures are not for green electricity, so they are for regular electricity, right?
So yes, that would be, at the time that the article was written, that was the average amount of CO2 per kilowatt of electricity. And that was what that was based on. I would assume that's probably gone down as more sustainable methods have become more popularized, but it would depend, I guess, entirely on what your sources are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would change, differ so much, like from state to state and from provider to provider.
Yeah.
So ideally, if you wanted to calculate that, you would need to ask your provider about their CO2 emissions per kilowatt. Okay, more questions from Bijo, I guess. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Can Denise please put your contact in the chat for those of us who would like a copy of the spreadsheets? Okay, I will send the email afterwards. Alexander, source of wood is very important. In most densely populated areas, there is no real scrap wood. Spare wood is burned for electricity. Where does your wood come from?
So I live on 3 acres and I'm at the base of a mountain in Maryland, and
Nice.
Yeah, I like it. So the wood that I use has all come from my property. I have some old trees that have died, and they
will this be recorded? This is being recorded. So
and they've been put up so that I will, be using them for quite some time. There were several really old trees that were close to the house that looked like they were getting ready to fall on the house. And in fact, large chunks of them had fallen near the house. So I'll have wood for years to come from those. And the part of our property we've actually allowed to go back to forest, and there's a lot of poplar trees on the property, and they grow very quickly. So I feel like we'll be more than replenishing what we've taken over time.
You're so lucky to have your own sources of wood, so you don't have to buy any.
No, and there's a hardware store not too far away that has like free pallet wood out there every once in a while. So if I wanted to get something to supplement, I can always get that too.
Okay, great. So we have a few more questions. I will probably stop taking questions for this section. I will read just the ones that we already have. Is there a table that shows equivalency between units of Orion fuel types? 1 gallon of propane, 1 gallon of gas, 1/3 of wood, etc.
Yes. So the conversion chart on my spreadsheet shows a kilowatt, a gallon of gasoline, a gallon of oil, a gallon of propane, a quart of wood, a gallon of kerosene, and a gallon of natural gas, because those are typically the units that those are sold in. I don't know if I'm sure there's probably some information out there about equivalency that I'm maybe not aware of.
All right. So yeah, I mean, for example, in Ukraine, we don't have gallons, we use metric system, so it would be completely else. It would be liters probably. and
Sure.
wood is in cubic meters. When I used your article to calculate our anagamma firing carbon footprint, I had to convert everything,
Oh, yeah.
of course. But I mean, it's totally doable. You just Google. Actually, you can even write in a Google bar like 5 gallons of gas, 2 cubic meters, and it does everything automatically. Okay. So probably just one last question to Denise, and then we'll move on to Steve. So the question from Jackie: I fire in an electric kiln. Would planting trees annually as part of my business practice help offset the carbon? Or is it kind of ineffective because trees make so long to mature? Does firing near mature trees help? Interesting question.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I would never tell anyone not to plant more trees. I plant small trees on our property fairly regularly, whether they're ornamental or, trees that are just local. One of my oak trees had a baby. It was in one of my flower beds, but by the time I saw him, he was this big. So he stayed, and some of those flowers are getting moved because I'd rather have the tree there ultimately. So and if I do find small trees in places that I don't want them, I tend to move them and replant them nearby. So I would always encourage you to plant trees. I'm a bit of a tree hugger. I love them.
Yeah. The best day to plant a tree was yesterday. The second best is today.
Right.
The only thing with offsetting from the environmental perspective is that it's not a it doesn't save it all. I mean, planting trees is good. Sometimes paying for offset to a third party also can be acceptable idea, but we shouldn't we shouldn't assume that it will automatically absorb all of the emissions and that will go carbon free. This is a good thing to do, and we can have some calculations, but still we need to manage the firing itself to be more carbon efficient. Okay, then one last question to you, Denise. I promised
Okay.
it. I promised the previous one was last, but this is the real last. From Xander about the local emissions due to the addition of propane, PM10, etc., like the particles. I assume it is a lot better than plain wood.
So
What do you think?
yeah, propane, by the pound, or is a fairly low emission carbon fuel compared to other fuels. So by using propane with wood, I believe that I'm putting less carbon into the environment than I would be if I were strictly using wood. I was mostly using propane with just a little bit of wood to get the reduction effects that I wanted. I have been adding a little bit more wood to this newer kiln. Again,
sorry to interrupt. There is a clarification, not carbon, but particles like smoke, flying
yeah.
ash.
Oh yeah, there's definitely fewer particles going out of the chimney. But some studies that I've, and I can't quote one exactly, but some studies that I've read have talked about the particulate matter really being very localized. So like the potters who are firing the kiln, they're being affected by the particulate matter much more than people who are away from that area. From a wood firing perspective, I don't know that that's something that's sustained in the air for a long period of time. I think it's more a danger to the people in the kind of who are firing the kiln and around the kiln building than further away.
I mean, it all adds up, so those particles have to go somewhere.
Right.
But yeah. I guess Steve has to say about particles in his presentation. So at this point, we will thank Denise so much for sharing your expertise and for actually doing this work of comprising this table, tables, and to doing all the research behind them. So thank you so much. Stay with us till the end if you can. And I will now pass the virtual floor to Dr. Steve Harrison from Australia. And I will be showing the photos for him.
Thanks,
So,
Yuliya.
thank you, Denise. So, Steve, please unmute your microphone when you're ready, and give me a second to start sharing the screen.
Okay, is that on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Steve Harrison. I live in Australia, in New South Wales, about a couple of hours south of Sydney in the Southern Highlands. And I've been here 47 years on 3 hectares, about 7 acres, half of which is forest. So since 1976, we've been using the wood that comes off our own forest. And we've had solar on our roof since 2007. So our electric kilns fire on solar with the addition of a battery. And we have the wood kilns, a Buri box kiln, which is fairly clean firing. I think it's cleaner than other types of firebox. We have solar electric, and we have a portable wood kiln. The little portable kilns fire off branches that the trees drop. So these, we don't have to worry about seasoning the timber. These are dead branches and they're dropping all the time. So we have to pick them up so we can mow the grass to reduce the fire hazard. So we collect those branches and we use those in the firing. So I've called it vegan wood firing in the sense that no trees were harmed in the wood firing. We didn't chop down any trees, we just pick up what the tree sheds. So this first image you can see here, this is from the electric kilns that I built. This is a ceramic fiber board, and I've milled it out to make grooves for electrical elements. Have the next image, please. There's a close-up. So you can see it has a little retaining wall to keep the wound elements inside the wall. Next one. Okay, so it's a top-loading kiln. It's 600 mils cubed, so 60 centimeters cubed. So I'm just here, I'm putting elements into the wall. Next. And here it is with its lid on and its controller fitted. Now, you'll notice for an electric kiln, it's just a little bit different in that it has a chimney at the top with a square block as a damper, and has at the bottom left-hand corner, it has a little square hole, which is where I fit a pilot burner, just a very small 20 millimeter pilot burner. There's one on each corner diagonally opposite. So we fire the kiln on solar power. It goes up to 1,000 degrees on solar, and then I pull the little plug out and fit the pilot burner. I light the pilot burner. So we use LP gas to create the reduction atmosphere, but not to fire the kiln. So in this way, we're firing on the solar, but using LP just for reduction. So that takes around about 400 grams of gas for a firing in this 8 cubic foot kiln. So I use a 9 kilo barbecue bottle, one of those ones you pick up from the local service station to put on your barbecue. It's a 9 kilo bottle, and that gets about 20 or 25 firings out of one bottle. So it's a very minimal use of LP gas. So LP gas is a fossil fuel, so I'm trying to keep it to the absolute minimum. So this is one of the answers that I came up with to try and minimize my carbon footprint, using solar for all the heating and just that small amount of LP for reduction. Now, my friend Len Smith built a kiln sort of like this, and he went one better, and he used little tiny slithers of wood to create the reduction between 1,000 and 1,300. So that was a pretty good idea. I tried it, but I only did one firing because spending 3 hours sitting there putting tiny little slithers of wood into the hole every sort of 5 minutes was pretty boring and kind of exciting when you first start to do it, but after a couple of hours, the fun kind of wears off. So I was happy to just let it run on propane, and it worked reasonably well. So can we have the next slide? and we should see there's the burner being fitted at the bottom. It just clips on. I made a little mounting so you can clip it on and clip it off when you want it and when you don't want it. And the next one, a close up with the little burner with it's got a safety switch in case it goes out, and it's all completely legal and properly fitted. And the last one is a picture of the flue here. So I put a little sheet of fibre over the top of the chimney, and you can see the flame coming out there. So you can damper it back by putting a little tile over that and cutting it back more. I did various experiments with using slightly higher and lower pressures, and I found around about 5 kPa pressure off the pressure gauge. That's about as low as my pressure gauge can sensibly read. Any lower than that, and you can't, it's not accurate. So it's about the lowest possible setting for pressure, and a very low volume. As I say, 400 grams of gas, more or less. I think there's one more. Okay, no, there isn't. Okay, well, this is now changing to the little portable kilns. These are the little kilns that I built. I originally started making these kilns on wheels when I worked at an art school, and the administrator said that we couldn't have any fuel firings for some reason. I don't know why. It's an art school, you should be experimenting. So I built these little kilns on wheels. I called them guerrilla tactics firing. After 5 o'clock, when the administrator went home, you could wheel it out, do a quick firing and finish by 9 before the college closed, and wheel it away, and no one ever knew. So that was very popular with the students, particularly because they could imagine they could actually own a kiln like this. It's something that they could afford, and they could realistically say, yes, I could do this myself at home. The great big industrial kilns that the college bought for firing most of their work are just out of the reach of most students when they graduate. They don't have a spare $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So these little portable kilns were very popular. And I started making them as wood-fired versions so that we could use up all these sticks that we have around our property. So if you see in the wheelbarrow here, there's tiny sticks on one side and slightly larger ones on the other. So we start with small sticks and work up to bigger ones. And there's more than enough to fire the kiln there in those 2 wheelbarrows. If you fire to stoneware in 3 hours, that's the stoneware reduction firing, it goes up in 3 hours, can do it, then you only need 1 wheelbarrow. But if you go for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, then you'll need the 2 wheelbarrow loads of wood. Can we have the next slide? So there's the look at the glazes inside. They're pretty normal, everyday reduction stoneware fired glazes. It's a blue celadon and chun and pale limpid celadon, green celadon, normal sort of stuff. Next picture. So this is the little firebox. It has a stainless steel grate. I tried steel ones, but they tended to melt at stoneware. So I made the grate out of stainless steel bars. Next one. This is my partner, Janine King, who I work with and live with. She's doing the firing there. So she's just starting off, and you can see the sort of kindling that's at the front of the firebox. It's very minimal because it's a small kiln built out of very lightweight bricks, and it's very fuel efficient. Next slide. So there's a little bit of a flame coming out there. This is in the reduction phase. So you can see there's a tile on top of the chimney. We've put a little brick slither there, and you can damper the chimney back to get more intense reduction if you want to, and to slow the kiln down. If you want to go for, say, 5 hours instead of 3, you have to slow it down by closing off the damper a little bit. Next one. Well, that's more of the same. Next slide. Okay. So, well, yeah, sorry, these are a bit duplicated. Next one.
Stephen, I'm afraid that's all I have.
That's it. That's okay. That's okay. I thought there was one that was a bit more flame.
Maybe I've lost one. Sorry if I did.
No, I probably didn't send it. I'm sorry. Okay, so in summary, what I've got here is we have a 2-chamber brewery box kiln, which is stoneware firing, fairly clean firing, because the brewery box is the cleanest sort of firebox you can build at the moment. We have the solar electric, and we have the portable wood. So we're fairly reliant on wood, but we have our own forest that we've managed for the past 47 years. So we only just pick up the dead wood and use dead trees. So there is some sort of carbon being put into the atmosphere, but it is carbon from the atmosphere. So ultimately, it all goes back given time. We've had solar since 2007, and we haven't paid an electricity bill since then. We've been self-reliant for electricity since then. And what we have, we've built it up. We started when photovoltaic panels were more expensive. We started with 3 kilowatts, and then we went to 6 kilowatts. And then we added another 6, and now we've got 17 altogether, 17 kilowatts, and 2 batteries. Now, when we only had 6 kilowatts of power and 1 battery, we could fire a small electric kiln that was a 400 millimeter cube, 400, 400, 400. And 6 kilowatts and a battery is enough to do that. So you start with the solar power throughout the day, and in the evening or the afternoon, the sunshine starts to decrease, and then you have to use the battery to top up the excess. But now we've got 18 kilowatts and 2 batteries, we can fire a much larger kiln entirely off the solar. So the battery is a way of storing yesterday's sunshine to use today. And the following day it recharges, because we only ever fire once a week. So there's plenty of time in between time for the battery to recharge. And we also have an electric car, which we also charge off the solar. So we have enough that we sell our excess throughout the week. And once the batteries are charged and the car's charged, then the excess goes back to the grid and we get paid for that. Not very much, but we do get paid. Some of the notes here, what have I got? Oh, yes. I have written an article on this kind of topic for the woodfiring.com website, which is worth a look perhaps. And I also have a blog called Tonight My Fingers Smell of Garlic, which I detail how we live here with growing our own food and making our electricity, making our pots, whatever. Okay, that's about what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. It sounds amazing, like having all self-reliant home and studio and different kilns. And it seems that people are having lots of questions for you. I will read them one by one. So Jenny asks, Steve, are you completely off the grid and relying on batteries for solar-powered kilns?
No, we are connected to the grid, and we sell our excess back to the grid and actually make some money out of that.
Okay, so there is a supply if you need.
Yeah, there is
asks,
when it's very cloudy and dull, and you still want to fire the kiln. So we do withdraw from the grid occasionally, but we do buy 100% guaranteed green power. We pay extra. Instead of 24 cents a kilowatt, we pay 35 to get wind power. But we've never paid for that power, even though they charge us 35 cents a kilowatt for it, because we have such an excess in the account that they always owe us money. So what happens is at the end of a 3-month period, they just deduct the bit we've used and we still get paid. We just don't get paid as much.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that would depend on your country and state regulations on renewable energy. Okay, next question then from Xander. The hybrid electric kiln is very interesting. So you turn off the coils at 1000 degrees Celsius, so they aren't as hot when they are in the reducing atmosphere and last longer. Do you turn off the coils when you start the reduction?
The kiln fires all the way from room temperature to stoneware temperature on electrical element power. It's entirely based on electrical firing. The gas is only to create a small amount of reduction atmosphere, some carbon monoxide, a very small amount, just enough to change the colors. So it's an electric kiln, it fires on electricity. Whether you decide to reduce or not is up to you. So yeah, it's an full-on electric kiln. Someone's going to ask me, so how does it shorten the life of the elements? And I can't tell you that, because that kiln got burnt in the devastating fire that cleaned us up a few years ago, and it never needed a change of elements. So at the moment, I haven't got around to rebuilding it. I've been building the new workshop and doing lots of other things. So I don't know how long the elements will last. But I think if you do a bisque firing in between each glaze firing, or if you do a stoneware oxidized glaze firing, it repairs the oxide coating on the elements. And I think we'll get a pretty good life out of them. I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I don't think it's a major issue. And when it does come to replace the elements, well, it's just one of those costs that you have to bear with any kiln that needs maintenance.
Okay, thank you so much. So sorry for the loss in the wildfire. It sounds devastating, but I'm so glad that you two are rebuilding everything back. Yeah, so you haven't observed any immediate damage to the electric coils from the
I'm sure there is some, but
Mhm.
whether it shortens them dramatically or I don't think it does. I think they'll last a reasonable length of time. When we have just a straight electric kiln that just does nothing but fire on radiated heat from the electric elements, I built one of those something like 15 years ago. I put very good quality Canthol A1 elements in there. And for the entire 15 years of the life of that kiln, I never changed the elements.
Mm.
If you put really good quality elements in, and plenty of them, then they last a very long time.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Sorry, I keep interrupting. Yeah, so we have much more questions and I will try to read a few
Sure.
more. So Aubrey asks, please, can you tell us what the wood kiln on wheels looks like inside so we can build our own?
Well, if you go to the logbook, it's a defunct wood firing magazine. It's closed now, but if you can find back copies of the logbook, perhaps in a library or a college, I did put a sketch of how it looks in that article I wrote for the logbook. So there's a description of the kiln and the firing and how it's built. You can also go to my blog and if you type in small portable electric kiln, something like that, into the search box, I put up a lot of posts over the years as I was developing that kiln. So the current version is number 11. So there are quite a few articles in there on the blog about how it developed from a simple small kiln to a more complex stoneware kiln. So you can look at the pictures and read the text.
Okay, so it's not a secret. You don't keep it to yourself.
No. The people keep writing to me and saying, "Oh, can I have the plans or can I buy one?" I used to make them when I had a kiln building factory before the fire. I used to make a dozen of those at the start of each year. That was my first job, and I would start my year in February, March by making a dozen of those and selling them. So there's a lot out there. And people keep asking me, "Oh, when are you going to put out a little booklet on, with the plans and how to do it?"
Yeah.
And I do intend to do that, but I've just been so busy the last 3 years rebuilding my studio, and I haven't had time. That's a luxury thing to do. But I will get around to it. There will be plans and a booklet one day.
Okay, so good news for us people. We just have to wait a little bit, or maybe one day you'll like organize a fundraising and we can pay you in advance while you are writing this book. I mean, there are different options. Okay, more questions, a few more from Ariel. Are the soft bricks inside durable to the wood ash?
Yeah, they're fine. What I used was the very lightest of bricks, the RI23 or M23, 2300 Fahrenheit, that grade of lightweight brick. It's best if you use something like that to make it very lightweight so you can wheel it around and move it. Also, it uses the least amount of wood fuel. You could use heavier bricks, but then you'd have to make a slightly bigger firebox and a bigger chimney to burn more wood to heat the heavier bricks. So there are options, but I did use the very lightest bricks and they're fine because they're only short firing. We're not firing for 14 days. It's not an anagama firing. We're firing for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And of course, half of that is at low temperature. So we haven't noticed any particular degradation or shrinkage particularly. When I've used bricks like that in my brewery box kiln, which fires for 14 or 18 hours, yes, they do build up a slag on the surface of the brick, and that does eventually spoil off. And so the brick gets marginally thinner as the little bits of glaze build up and then drop down. But I've always pulled my kilns down because I want to change the design. I've never worn one out from spalling or from ash slag attack. I don't think it's an issue. The last kiln I had for 14 years or so before the fire, that was made from homemade bricks where I dug my own high alumina bauxite clay and mixed it with wood sawdust. And those homemade bricks now last 14 years. Yes, they were degrading, but the kiln was still working fine. It would probably see me out.
Okay, you look like a kind of a DIY, hard DIY guide. You are doing everything by yourself, including the bricks. That's just amazing.
I'm dig it all.
Dig it all, right? Okay, so people write in the chat box that back issues of the logbook are available online. So we can Google them and find the issue. And do you happen to know a month, year when your kiln scheme was published, or do we have to just?
No, it was in the last 1 or 2 years of the publication. Okay. So that will give you what, 6 issues to look at. Yeah, go back 5 issues or something like that.
Okay, another question. Are you going to write another book about these new kilns? We have covered that you probably will if you have time. What temperature or con do you fire in these wild kilns, in the small ones?
Cone 10.
Con 10.
That's pretty close to 1300 centigrade.
Yeah, that's pretty a lot. Okay, probably last question to Steve. Thanks, Steve. Ellen writes, do you have any thoughts or experience of electric firing with a flame reduction at the end? I am part of a gas firing pottery. The reduction we achieve from gas is key to our work, but we know this isn't sustainable. Isn't that what you covered already with your solar kiln?
I think so. Yes, you do. Yes, you reduce with the gas in the solar electric kiln, and it's only just for the reduction, so just a small amount of carbon monoxide. What you have to be careful of is that this design still needs some tweaking when I rebuild the next one, that you need to get the flame all around the kiln. So I chose to use 2 pilot burners, diagonal opposite corners, so they fire around and around and make a sort of spiral of flame around the chamber. I think that's better than having 1 burner, unless the burner was smack in the bottom, underneath the bottom shelf and aimed upwards and spread around the kiln. And I think it would be better to try having 4 flue holes, 1 in each corner at the top, as well as that central one. So you could have, say, 5 in total. That they'd only be 10 millimeters or 12 millimeters diameter. They'd be tiny holes, because you don't need any bigger hole than that for the amount of gas that you're burning. But the more you spread the flue holes around the top of the kiln, the more even the reduction will be.
All right, very interesting. Yeah, you have to account for this dynamic of fumes. Okay, someone have found the logbook with your scheme already. It's issue 78 from 2019. Rejoice, people. Thank you so much, Jackie, for sharing with us. All right, it seems that all is covered now. Thank you so much, Steve, for your presentation and for sharing your experience with us and for answering questions. We will now move on to our next presenter, who is Jessie Jones from the Pleasant Hill Pottery. Jessie, I will now make you a host, and you will be able to share your presentation with us. Okay.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, perfectly.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's nice to see a lot of my friends in the audience too, so thanks for coming. My title of the presentation is Use of Waste Vegetable Oil as a Supplementary and Sustainable Fuel in the Wood Firing Process. But the shorter title is Biodiesel, Praise the Lord. I think that translates into some languages. So today I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to start with who I am. So I am a left-handed civil engineer. I'm a potter. I'm a half of an identical twin set. So there's a clone of me out there. If you see him, he's elsewhere in the world. I'm an erstwhile pottery instructor, welder, succulent enthusiast, ultimate frisbee player, small engine mechanic, scuba diver, kayaker, canoeist, a truffle farmer, and I'm an organized pack rat. Let's see. Yeah, there's some pictures of me doing my other activities here on the right. So today I want to talk to you about what WVO is, why you use it, how to use it, future ideas for the use of it, and then I'll happily take your questions. All right, so what is WVO? WVO is waste vegetable oil. It's also known as, you'll hear it referred to as SVO, which is straight vegetable oil, PPO, which is pure plant oil, or UCO, used cooking oil. It's all the same stuff. It's the stuff that comes out of the deep fryer when we're done with it. Waste vegetable oil, you'll also hear biodiesel. Waste vegetable oil is a precursor or an ingredient for biodiesel. So it's the feedstock. They'll do a chemical change to, or waste vegetable oil is an ingredient. They change it slightly chemically, and then it can be turned into biodiesel. What we use is waste vegetable. We've also burned biodiesel. It's the same, it's just more expensive if you have to go buy it. Briefly, the process for oil is it comes from seeds of plants, gets pressed, gets extracted, gets refined, then we eat it or use it. And then what we're using on our side is the waste. Once it's used and left over, then we get it before it goes. It's often taken and goes, if we don't get it, it would go to like a refinery and get turned into biodiesel. So why do you use waste vegetable oil? Why would you use it? And I will give the pros and cons. It's not all great, so I'll definitely share our experiences. So we like it mainly for it's the ease in reaching top temperature. So we fire all of our kilns with wood primarily as the primary fuel. Anymore, actually, we don't even candle. We used to candle with propane a little bit, but we don't even do that anymore. We do a wood, like a campfire, hearth fire, and then we fire to like usually around cone 8, and then we start using the vegetable oil. And then it's kind of like, well, we'll get to how it works. So reasons we like it. It's labor saving. You're not putting as much wood in the kiln, so it's physically easier. There's less open door time. So when you open the stove door to put wood in, you'll often let oxygen, or you will let oxygen in, and generally colder air. And so the way that the biodiesel, veg oil is introduced, it's there's less open door time. So temperatures, you don't get those temperature drops there. Really, probably the best advantage of using it is this ability to change and maintain the atmosphere inside the kiln. So with just you can very easily change from oxidizing to heavy reduction. You can keep it in heavy reduction. You can kind of tune the reduction that you want based on the amount of oil you're adding. And it's very responsive. Like within seconds of making an adjustment, you'll see a change in the kiln. So we like the atmosphere control there. It's also this rapid and sustained heat release. So in the old days, our wood wasn't as seasoned as it is now. We had less of it, and so we were burning it faster than we could season it. And so the oil was super helpful in getting us to those peak temperatures. We could get up to like cone 10, 11, 12 really easily, but then or fairly easily, but if we wanted to get cone 13, we could just turn the valves and it would just shoot right up there quick. So we kind of talk about it as cruise control. And then this is some pictures. It's just sort of the flame out the top is probably excess oil. This is a train kiln down here, and the flame's supposed to be coming out the chimney, not out the firebox. So that was probably just a little mistake or something for a picture. All right, so some advantages of why to use waste vegetable oil. There's a decrease in unmelted fly ash. So at the end of the firing, instead of dropping in wood and kicking up coals or having embers fly out of the pots, you can really minimize that and just be burning this volatilized liquid fuel, but it turns into a vapor. So we find that it can, like, it's basically polishing the pots at those high temperatures. The systems that I've worked on are very economical, very cheap, very simple, really accessible to all. There are a lot more complicated burners, you know, with forced air and atomization. But again, they're more efficient. They produce more heat. Ours is like a low-tech DIY system, and it allows us. It's fun to play with, and it does, as the topic of this presentation, it's a supplemental fuel, and it's just we'll get to some of those qualities here in a second. It's this the benefit of a liquid fuel. So that means that you can, it's coming out of a tank or a bucket. You can valve, you can meter and control how much goes in. You can measure how much goes in. So it's just it's a very quantifiable thing, and it's helpful for research and repeating.
So I've got 60% battery.
Firings. Okay, and the last benefit is that you can get flame out the chimney if you want to, like send a signal to your neighbors. It's fun. So again, the kind of big picture, why you'd use it, the sustainability aspects, a much better substitute for petroleum-based fuels, and it works like petroleum-based fuels. Like if you were burning oil, kerosene, or fossil fuel-based oils, this is like a direct substitute for that. It fits in a lot of the, or you could pour motor oil down our burners and get the same effect, but the biodiesel is a lot better, or the veggie oil is a lot better. Renewable and locally available. So it's in all the communities. Every fryer, every food cart has a fryer. So it's definitely around there. If you start asking around, go to restaurants and ask what they're doing with their oil, chances are that they might give it to you. So there was a question earlier about the heat relation of, or some quantitative number stuff here. So this is what I've been able to find for waste vegetable oil, and this is again, these are English units, but the relationships will be what's more important here. That's 120,000 BTUs per gallon of oil is the rough heat value for waste vegetable oil, and what that equates to. So it means a cord of softwood is equivalent to about 100 gallons of waste vegetable oil, and a cord of hardwood is equivalent to about 175 gallons of waste vegetable oil. So that just kind of puts it into ballpark. When we fire, again, we're not using it as our primary fuel. We're using a supplemental fuel. We're burning between 5 gallons and 25 gallons in a firing. Sometimes we burn 50 gallons if we're really feeling, and again, I think I alluded to this earlier. We used to burn even more of it, or we used to burn those amounts, but now we've increased our wood acquisition, our wood sources, the mills that we get our waste wood from. And so we're actually able to season the wood longer, which has made firing really easy. We're actually holding all the kilns back they're wanting to go through the peak temperatures. So we hold them back and rein them in. And so the oil is only at this point, like for show or atmosphere change. It's not really for the heat gain, but it is useful for that if you are wanting that kind of boost. So how to find waste vegetable oil? Like I said, restaurants, cafeterias, food trucks, available in every community.
No, Zach.
Sorry to interrupt. People, could I ask you to please mute your microphones if you're not talking? Well, Jesse is a host. I cannot go and mute everyone, so please self-moderate. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So for transportation, there's a lot of different ways to transport this, to move it around, to handle it. We've gone from the very complicated to the very easy, and I'll go in that direction and tell you the best way I've found to handle it. Drum pumps and drums, that's how we started doing it and storing it. Hand trucks, it gets heavy. It's a heavy liquid fuel, and so that becomes cumbersome, takes bigger equipment and stuff. All of these things, drums, hand trucks, trailers, pumps, we've used it all. Hoses. You definitely want gloves and rags. It's dirty, or it's sticky, and that stickiness attracts dirt, which makes grime, and so it's not the cleanest thing in the world, and that's something that is definitely a negative for it. So handling it temperature, warmer the better. Like in the wintertime, it can be, it thickens up and it flows more slowly in the lines. And so it's harder to work with. But you don't always have control over the temperature. So we've even heated up buckets of, like, we'd get like a metal pail and pour oil in it and heat it up like next to the kiln before we put it into the bucket, the gravity feed system, to get it in the kiln. Cleanliness of the oil is important. You'll see in a minute about the manifold system, how it goes into the kiln. The screening methods, like you kind of want to sieve it so that when you get the oil from the restaurants, it comes out of a fryer. It'll have like bits of fries and broccoli and tempura, whatever it is. It's got like food particles in it. And so it's really important to strain that, or else it'll stack up inside the constriction points in your manifold system. So we just pour it through like a kitchen sieve here, or a window screen over like a plastic bucket, 5-gallon bucket. And we just give like a one-time filter through that, and then just keep it clean, and then it won't mess your system up. Dawn dish soap will be your friend. You definitely, it's a greasy thing, so definitely have soap around to help clean up. Like we talked about storage, it really depends on the quantities you're using. These are pallet totes. They hold about 300 gallons, so over 1,000 liters in these things. And these are 55-gallon drums, so 200-liter drums there. Buckets, 5-gallon, 20-liter buckets. And then our favorite are these cubes. So the cube over here is 3 gallons. So that's like 12 liters roughly. That's how oil is commonly bought and consumed by restaurants. It's a 3-gallon cube. It usually weighs 30 to 40 pounds and 35 pounds, I think. And so they'll often take that, they'll pour that oil in their fryer, use it for a week or two, and then they pour it back into the jug and set it out behind the restaurant. And if you actually keep it in these jugs, that's great, because you can lift it, move it around, it's square, it stacks nice, you can store them. And we will literally take it from that cube and put that screen over an empty 5-gallon bucket and pour the oil one time through the screen, and then it's clean in the bucket, and then you can use it from there. So we've done it all, but like, not, if you don't want to mess with the pumps and things, just keep it simple, keep it in buckets and bins. This is the setup we have at Pleasant Hill right now. This is about 600 gallons of filtered oil. So we had it all in drums and cubes, and we did one time, we filtered it all. It was real messy, but we got it all done. We filtered it all. So this oil is clean and ready to go. And we just crack a valve at the bottom here and get, 5 gallons out in a few seconds, and then take it over to the kiln. But this is kind of on a large scale. You don't need to work in this scale. So how do you use it? So really simple. These are some of the parts that are in the systems. This is and we'll see this in a photo next of where these fit in, how they fit in the system. This is a little just on-off valve that's near the reservoir bucket. This is a manifold here down at the bottom. So a manifold is a pipe network. And in this case, it takes the oil from the reservoir and distributes it into the burners in the kiln. So the oil is flowing this way and then comes down into one of these legs and comes down, and the burner's down here. This just hangs on the kiln. And then there's a little valve here. This is your flow control valve. It's a ball valve here. This is all 1/2-inch galvanized pipe. So it's about the size of your thumb, maybe the outside diameter, and inside diameter the size of your pinky is kind of the flow size through here. So this whole system is about $50 US. Prices probably have gone up a little bit since I built them, but it's really not expensive to build this kind of a delivery system here. So this is the low-tech delivery system in action. This is a 5-gallon plastic bucket hanging up there's the big source tanks in the back there. So you fill this tank up, and you have a little on-off valve here. This is a plastic tube. It was clear at one point. Now it's pretty dirty. And then this flows into the manifold system here. And I have more pictures that show this, but that's as simple as it gets. It's a gravity feed, a kind of a drip system here. So this is another one on the most recent kiln that I built. This is a really simple system. So that bucket is up off to the left up here, and it's just not connected right now, but that tube would come down and connect here. This is your flow control valve. and that just comes around like this, and it goes down, and then this is the burner right here, and then where it goes into the kiln. So just a very simple system. This is a close-up of that burner. We'll get into a little bit better pictures of what the burners actually look like. So as far as methods of introduction for waste vegetable oil, this is that first manifold that we saw. This is on the front of the soda kiln. So that bucket hangs up here on the wall, and it flows across here and gets into the manifold and then flows down and into the burners. The manifold system is kind of the primary. That's like the cruise control where you set it and it runs for hours at a time. You keep refilling the oil, but that's like a continuous flow system. We also have experimented with pouring the oil in. And so what that would do is we'd take a little Dixie cup, a little small amount, a few ounces of oil, and we would pour it directly in to the burner. So we're bypassing this system. We just kind of walk. It's like a little mini stoke of oil, basically, and you just pour it in there and it goes in and acts like a stoke of fuel. We've also dipped sticks. So this is fun, a little bit messy, but it's fun. We take a bucket, fill it about half full of oil, and we would dip our wood in it. And then we would throw the wood into the kiln, and it's fun and exciting and a lot of smoke and fire, but it drips a little bit of oil on the ground. So then you have a little bit of a mess to clean up. One of the methods that I do like using now is what we call pulsing. And so pulsing would be more like a wood stoke. So you would you're firing the kiln and putting wood in, and every once in a while you could skip a wood stoke and you come over and you just turn the valve on for a few seconds and then close it. And that fuel gets metered into the kiln over, say, 10 seconds of fuel introduction. And that acts like a wood stoke. It combusts or volatilizes, then combusts, then releases heat, and then goes out the chimney. So it's a very interesting, it really mimics the wood, and it's kind of fun. It just keeps you active moving around there. So as far as these burners, I've done a big evolution of design on them, and we'll get to that in just a second time. As far as how you put them in a kiln, so they're designed, they're just like a normal brick in US measurements is about 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches on the end area of it. These burners are about a 1/4 inch less than that standard brick size, and so they slide right into any brick hole that you could build into a kiln. And so I tell people, it's great if you can, when you're building a kiln, if you don't think you're going to ever use oil, just leave a couple of what we call knockouts, bricks that are in there, but that can be pushed out, and then have these burners slide in the future. And also, if you're done with the firing, you can pull the brick out and put a full brick plug, or pull the burner out and put a brick plug in. So it's just really nice to have them. They're hard to put in after the fact. They're easy to put in when you're building it. So I encourage people to put those knockouts in. And then usually the burners are above the firebox, so that the oil can fall off the burners and flow and water fall down into the, and generally you get better performance if the burners are as high up in the firebox zone as possible, so you get more time for the oil to cascade down. So here you can see in operation, here's the oil dripping out. Valves are about half open right here, and you can see this has a 2 burner system, and you can see the oil flowing, and that's the glow of the kiln inside there. Quickly on the burners, we started with these metal burners and big stair steps. So the oil would come in at the top and flow down, and a lot of air would flow through the back. Over time, we just kept refining them, and we kept getting them flatter and flatter. We were basically, too much air was coming into the kiln, and it was really locally hot. We wanted to lengthen the flame out, and so we started making the burners flatter. Like here's an example of a metal one up here that is more of a flat plate burner, and that increases the air velocity, that decreases the pressure, which helps oil volatilize more, and it's a much better system to go with as small amount of air as possible in that opening. So I started making them out of castable a few years ago, and the nice thing about the castable is it's really durable in this environment. It doesn't get consumed like steel, and you can also, they're small enough burners, they're about 16 inches long or so. They'll fit in your bisque kiln, so you can run them through a castable curing cycle, which really increases their strength, really turns them into like a brick. And then there's a picture here of what the mold or the form looks like that the castable's poured against. And then this one, if it works, this Not sure if that will work or not. That was just a picture of the burner. Give me a second, it's catching up. Yuliya, do you see something's changed on my end?
No, not yet. I just see a blank screen,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay.
While we're at it, I just wanted to quickly ask if there are any questions in the chat, because I don't seem to see any. Maybe it's just something on my side, or maybe just people are not ready with their questions. So, oh, now I can see. Okay, sorry, go on, Jesse.
Okay, I am just getting back to the presentation. I think yeah, I just went to a wrong slide. So, okay, so this is another system here, same idea, the bucket with the valve and flowing into burner. This is down low in a kiln, and this was kind of a we don't like this as much because the oil tends to get down on the floor of the kiln. There can be smoke associated with this depending on how much oil you're adding versus how much air you have coming in. So having a ventilated kiln shed, or if you're designing a kiln shed, just make sure you have a nice way for the smoke to get out. Good to have fire extinguisher around. Definitely have valves to control your flow, like a valve that you can just stop in case the fire is, you want to stop the oil, have a way to shut it down. The good news about veggie oil is it has a high fire point. So that means that it's not explosive like gasoline. Like you throw gas match on gas on the ground and put a match on it, you have a big problem. Oil, you can pour oil on the ground and put a torch on it and it wouldn't light. It would smoke after a while, might burn, but it's not at all flammable like more volatile fuels are. It's more slippery and stuff. So you'll if you get a spill on the ground, you throw sawdust or wood ash on it, mix it up, and then scoop it up and take it away. We have a couple future ideas. One is a parallel water introduction system. So basically, the manifold that we built for oil, build a parallel manifold of the same style and have a bucket of water. And then if you could trickle water in at the same time, that water will volatilize to steam. And that we theorize that would help the oil disperse better in the kiln too. So that's just an idea we've been playing with. We're very interested. We have actually firings coming up in the next month or so to use the veggie oil in that system for reduction cooling purposes. So this is a type of subset of wood firing. So we think that there's good potential there of really being able to control the atmosphere of the kiln as it cools. I'm continuing to refine the delivery systems and just making little improvements here and there. And then we're also interested in using these burners, or using our kilns in different ways. Instead of firing strictly with wood, we've thought about using wood up to like cone 8 or 9 when we usually start using the oil, and then really stop using wood and continue just firing with oil because all the bricks are hot and the firebox is hot. And then we can and do things like have more glazed work instead of raw clay. We'll have more glazed work in there. And so we just have a lot of ideas for the future, and I think there's a lot of potential there. And so there are a couple of articles and resources out there for people that are interested in this. John Britt wrote an article in 2003 about veggie oil firing, waste oil firing. And then I wrote another one detailing our experiences in the April 2017 issue. My article is available on my website, as are the burner plans. And then I'm also happy to answer any questions. You can reach out via email. I'll send you this slide presentation if anybody wants it. Yeah, just happy to help out if anybody has questions there. So yeah, that's the and then that's down there is the website is pleasanthillpottery.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. If our audience has any questions, please write them in the chat and I will read them aloud. So there was a question about whether the plants are available, and Jesse has already answered that yes, they are available on his website. I had a question. Well, maybe people are thinking about theirs. So Jesse, did you observe a substantial fuel economy because of adding the waste vegetable oil, or is it more for the effects?
I would say more for the effect. It really, you'd have to burn a lot of oil, like you said, to balanced against like a quart of wood. So we'd have to burn 100 gallons of oil to replace a quart of softwood. And on the kilns that we do have a small kiln, but on the mid-size to the larger kilns, we're anywhere from 2 cords to 10 cords of wood. And so on average, like some of the medium-sized kilns would be 3 cords of wood. Replacing that with 100 gallons of fuel would be we only have like 500 or 600 gallons of fuel around right now, and so we want to sustain that supply too, of not going through our vegetable oil too fast, if that makes sense. So basically, we haven't done enough. Wood is easier for us to come by than the vegetable oil, so
Okay.
we'd rather burn more of that.
Okay, I see. Then it can be also, like, from the sustainability perspective, it can be seen as a way to just utilize this waste oil, which would otherwise go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's how we feel
recycled
about it.
in the best case.
Yeah, and that's the same way I approach it the same way with our wood supply. So we get our wood from 3 local sawmills, and it's wood waste to them, and it would either go to a landfill and get chipped into wood chips. We're just basically intercepting a waste stream, and that's how I feel about this too. Like our oil comes from a neighborhood food truck, and he gives us like 30 gallons, or maybe 50 gallons a year, and so it's like a perfect. And at one point he gave us like 500 gallons, and then he started giving us we caught all his backlog, and so
yeah.
I see a question in there. If we were not buying it,
Yeah.
if we're not using it, how would it be disposed of? A lot of the larger restaurants, there's oil collection companies that go and that serve restaurants. They have like a grease trap or box outside their restaurant, and the big semi truck comes and pumps out these tanks at all these different restaurants, and it's used for to make biodiesel for cars or vehicles. Can I see the question? Does it smell like fries? It can smell. It smells nice. It doesn't smell bad. We definitely can get some food smells out of it. But yeah, we're in a kind of a rural area, so we don't have neighbors complain too much. Yeah, Denise, I see your question. This is actually how
I see that you went on to read yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah. I just have it open. Yeah, I was reading the thing. We do use the sawdust. So when we do our soda introduction in our wood soda kiln, I actually mix the soda mixture that we use. I mix it with vegetable oil and sawdust, and I make a nice paste out of that. And then I put that on big flat boards, and I lay those boards in the kiln. And it's nice because it doesn't dry out. The soda doesn't crumble and fall off of the boards. It's not using very much, but it's a nice use of all these materials to make our lives easier when we're doing the soda introduction.
Wow, interesting. Very inventive, I would say. I had a question, actually. So you're using the oil as it is, you're not converting it into biodiesel, right?
Yeah, we're using it as is, as straight oil.
I've heard or read previously about, I think he's a professor at the university, but I can't remember his name, who is making his own biodiesel and has a kiln that works on that. Have you thought in this direction, or are you happy with oil as it is?
Yeah, we've actually, there's a biofuel station not far from us in here, and we've actually bought biodiesel from them and burned it in the kilns. We've also had there's basically very minimal heat value gained from the conversion of waste vegetable oil to biodiesel. It's a process that's going to take you time and energy to do it, and the actual heat value change is probably, it might be a 10% increase in from in a gallon to gallon ratio, but it was very close. There wasn't basically a benefit to do so, but we have burned biodiesel in these burners, refined biodiesel in the kilns before.
Yuliya, I think you might be talking about Ben Culbertson. He's a professor at Shippensburg University. He did a biodiesel kiln with the metal plate system.
Yeah, probably. I don't think there are many people who've tried that. It's just like, I don't remember his name at the moment. Yeah, but thank you, Denise.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jesse. It's been a very profound explanation, and good that you have plans available, because it seems that our audience is very keen on plans and drawings of all the technologies that's been mentioned today. It's time to start wrapping up our webinar. We are running close to the end of it. So I just wanted to maybe briefly summarize just a few key points from the presentations of our speakers. So one is that it is possible to calculate or to estimate your CO2 footprint of your firing using the tables that Denise kindly shared. And I encourage everyone to at least try and do that and compare numbers of different techniques. Second is that renewable energy, wood scraps of sustainably managed forests, waste vegetable oil, and propane are probably like more sustainable types of fuels than others. And this is something to take into account if maybe you are planning on your next kiln, or you are thinking about switching to other firing techniques. And that there are plans and drawings available of these more sustainable kilns. Thank you to Steve and Jesse, who so kindly shared them. And I will share the links to those plans, as well as the articles and email of Denise with the registered participants. And also I will share the recording of this webinar on YouTube, but it will take a day or two for the video to convert and be uploaded. So thank you again, dear speakers, for your time and generous sharing, and thank you, audience, for your active engagement. I hope that you enjoyed this webinar. It was part of the project called Saving the World as a Potter, which I lead in order to empower fellow potters on their way towards sustainability. If you want to get notified about next meetings, which will include topics like sustainable raw materials for ceramics and dealing with studio waste and trying to go zero waste with your ceramics, please subscribe to Here and Now Pottery on Instagram or Facebook. And if you have registered for this webinar and ticked yes, I will add you to my email list, and you will get notification about the next webinars by email. And if you feel that this project is valuable to you and for the ceramic community, please consider supporting Here and Now Pottery on Patreon to get exclusive content and occasional discounts and gifts as well. I will check the chat again to see if there are any closing remarks or questions, burning issues. Probably not, just many thank yous and very thought-provoking, and send prayers to Ukraine and so on. On this, let me thank you again and wish you a very nice day or good night, depending on where you are on this planet Earth. And see you next time. On this, the webinar will be now finished, and you will be released from this webinar. Thank you.